Hey guys, Basil here with BTech, and I've had a couple of hours with the Nexus 5X. This is an LG made Nexus, £350 for the 32 gig variant, £300 for the 16 gig variant. Frankly speaking, can't recommend the 16 gig variant because this is not expandable. So it's either this or nothing in my books. What do I think of it after a couple of hours? Well, I've installed a ton of applications. I've run Antutu, so we've got a benchmarking score. In addition to that, I've taken a few camera samples, taken the same samples on a few other key devices. We've got the Honor 7, a really affordable device, 250 odd quid. Similar spec, in fact better in many areas. You've also got the OnePlus. This is £295 and you've got 64 gig memory inside, as well as a flagship grade processor, a Snapdragon 810. So where does the Nexus 5X get off charging so much for its seemingly not quite so competitive innards? Well, for starters, it's an official Google device, so Google sanctioned it. You're going to have pure Android experience. That means you've got Marshmallow on here for starters, so you've got Google Now on tap, as you saw I just activated. It is also a pretty neat looking device. I'm in absolute love with this color. It's ice blue. Is that enough to charge £350 for a 32 gig variant? Not so sure. I'm gonna see what you think after I run through my key first impressions with you. You've got a 5.2 inch full HD display, 5.2 inches on the Honor 7, 5.5 inches on the OnePlus 2. In addition to that, front facing speaker, it's a mono speaker though, down at the base. Right hand side is where you can see the buttons. Now I'd like these buttons to be either differently textured or metal or something in order for me to really easily know that I'm kind of thumbing over them. The power button, it's easy to miss when you just caress your finger over it. As for the volume rocker, a little bit more prominent right there. Down at the base, you've got a 3.5mm headphone jack and a micro USB Type-C. Many of you are wondering, does it support fast charging or quick charge 2.0 or 3.0? Now the power connector or adapter is a 3-volt one or 3-amp one. So that means that it technically charges faster than an old charger, if indeed it takes advantage of all of those amps. But the reality is they haven't officially said that it does or does not support it, so can't really say for sure. As far as battery drainage goes, this is what about three and a bit hours has done to it. Admittedly, we have been installing non-stop, taking pictures, and the screen is on full brightness right here, by the way. As far as other key ports goes, you can see left-hand side, you've got the nano SIM slot. Up at the top is a microphone. Around the back, you've got a camera hump right there. It's a 12+ megapixel camera. You've also got a dual flash laser autofocus and that fingerprint scanner, which actually is beautiful. It works a treat. Tap on it and it fires up. You can assign it to multiple fingers as well. We've got it set up to 4, so it's on both my index fingers, and I've also got it set up on my thumb as well, so it should have unlocked right there. So that's good. It works, the fingerprint scanner. The design's comfortable in the hand. The flat sides make it secure enough. It does feel a bit hollow, admittedly. It's quite light, so there is that. There's also a fair bit of bezel going on up top and bottom, in spite of the fact this isn't stereo speakers, it is just that mono speaker. The display is a full HD LCD screen, 5.2 inches, 424 odd pixels per inch. As you can see, in isolation, it looks like a pretty decent panel. When you compare it against a couple of other panels, it maybe loses a bit of its luster. It's calibrated a fair bit warmer than the Honor 7. I much prefer the Honor 7. Also, when I lay them down, you can probably make out the viewing angles on the Honor 7 are just that bit better. In addition to that, the OnePlus 2 just wipes the floor with it screen-wise. 5.5 inches, so it is bigger, but the calibration is a lot more akin to that of the Honor 7. And what you also get is a beautiful experience in terms of viewing angles, and this really is a great screen, even if it isn't Quad HD. Bearing in mind also, like I said, £295 for the 64 gig OnePlus 2 versus £350 for the 32 gig Nexus 5X, £250 for the Honor 7. So it's a pretty clear price jump, and it's really evident what you get when you jump from the Honor 7 to the OnePlus 2, but not so much what you get when you jump from the Honor 7 to the 5X, aside from obviously Marshmallow and a beautiful stock experience and no Emotion UI. Now talking about the innards, and this has a Snapdragon 808 inside. It's paired with 2 gig of RAM. Now I know I said it had 3 gig on the unboxing video because that's what it said on the box, but well, 3 GB, but it actually has 2 gig. The Snapdragon 808 seems to perform really, really well, and we honestly don't think we'll bump into any issues with it based on the fact you've only got a full HD display it's powering along. Having said that, as far as Antutu results go, if I jump into that, you can see it ranked pretty well, like above the Nexus 6, just below the HTC One M9 and all those. So it's pretty good for the price. You're getting a good amount of performance bang for your buck, but still, it's definitely worth noting 2 gig of RAM, not 3 on here. This is unlike these two devices. The Honor 7 has 3 gig of RAM, whereas the OnePlus 2 has 4 gig of RAM, Snapdragon 810 Kirin 935 combination processor. In addition to that, it's also worth noting there is no wireless charging on any of these devices, no expandability on any of them aside from the Honor 7. So 32 gig internal memory, 16 or 32 gig internal memory on the Nexus, and of course 64 gig, like I said, on the OnePlus 2. Now taking a look at the camera, Google has revised the camera UI somewhat, and it is a little bit better. As you can see, you've got those options right there. It feels a little bit more instantaneous. The sensor seems to do a good job of taking a quick picture. Flash was turned on, flash is off now. I can just very, very quickly line everything up, and you can see as soon as I focus and lock on, tap the button, and it takes super instantaneously. So that in isolation I am very, very happy with. As far as the picture goes, you can see that's about the closest focal range right there. Not too shabby at all. But what I did do is I took some pictures in a few situations. You can see also gesture left and right to switch between photo and video. I took some pictures with the flash on all of these devices. So if you just bear with me while I actually fire those pictures up, it will give you a pretty accurate impression as to how these 3 cameras perform against one another. We're going to talk about some flash action, and immediately you can see as these are laid out, the brightness varies hugely across these devices, with the 5X being the least bright of the bunch. You can see as far as the flash action goes though, it's a pretty good picture. What you've got is a decent amount of flash coverage from left to right, although it is slightly waning on the left-hand side. As far as the Honor, there's more vignetting on the Honor 7, so that suggests the flash might not have as much reach, but in the same breath, the center is really well exposed, if not slightly overblown, so probably even more even coverage. Having said that, it's also worth noting that the orientation is 4:3 versus a 16:9 in this instance, so that might have something to do with it. Now bringing in the OnePlus 2, you can see this is easily the best coverage as far as the flash goes, and what looks like the best picture. We can get close into the dartboard, see the numbers in order to ascertain whether this is, now I won't make this a conclusive camera comparison, but hopefully it will just give you a good first impression as to how the 3 perform against each other. Now actually, ironically, admittedly they're all on different screens, but the Nexus looks like it is the sharpest picture of the bunch, which is pretty good going. So I'm going to jump through to low light very quickly this way. The OnePlus is actually super impressive here. The low light doesn't look to be, it looks noisy, but it doesn't look to have thrown the exposure off too much. The Nexus is a much, much darker picture. Having said that, it looks like it deals with noise at least as well as the OnePlus because it dropped that exposure and didn't try and over brighten it. And it looks like the Honor 7 is the worst in terms of grain generally. And the next one image we can look at is just the normal image without any low light or flash. So that looks like a pretty beautiful stark white image. That has a slight yellowy tint, but that might be the screen calibration on the Nexus 5X. And finally, the OnePlus, yeah, that looks like a great image too. Can do our last jump in for detail, and this time we can take a look at the buttons. And that's as close as you can go there. And finally, OnePlus buttons, Honor 7 buttons. So that's the kind of thing you can expect. Now, obviously, this isn't an ideal comparison because we are viewing all these on their respective screens, but it should give you an idea that if nothing else, the Nexus 5X camera is competitive, which is really a first for Nexus devices. Now we'll be comparing it more thoroughly to other devices as we have it, and indeed stay tuned over the next couple of weeks. We can definitely smell an in-depth camera comparison coming along, but hopefully a really quick indication has been conveyed in this video as to what we think of the Nexus a couple of hours in. Sad facts, there's no wireless charging on here, so that gets me right down. Like I said, no expandability. Would have loved expandability, especially considering the fact that Marshmallow allows you to turn an SD card into effectively internal memory, so that would have been great. The reality is, therefore, you're only really going to get this device if you want a beautiful stock experience, if you don't know about either of those two, or if the price really comes down on this, or you find a really great price on contract. If you don't live in the UK and can find it for better value, it is standalone a good device, but with phones around getting so competitive, there are very few things that separate this from the crowd beyond the stock experience and that beautiful ice blue finish. If you enjoyed the video, click that like button. If you like BTech in general, click subscribe. That's how you're going to stay on top of everything that we do. Thanks for watching.